today sort of echoes back to the first day or two of class, because when we talked about, in the first day or two of class, we talked about in the mobile world there being sort of two sides of it, if you will. There being the web, mobile web sites, mobile web pages, and then native applications. So we could draw it like this. You know, on one hand, we have the web, and the other we have native apps. And we contrasted the respective advantages and disadvantages of these. All right. The web, the chief advantage of that is that it is a standard, which means that theoretically it's something that's fairly universal. All right. Theoretically, you should be able to take the same web page and display it on your desktop browser as you would on a mobile phone. Now, we know that there's limits to the standardization, even if you're just talking about in a desktop environment with browser compatibility issues and version issues and the same. So we know that that's the ideal. We know that in practice we don't necessarily hit that, but that's sort of the goal, and that's sort of the big selling point of doing things on the web. Because from an organization's perspective, if they're thinking of how they're going to deploy their stuff out to mobiles, one option is to have a mobile website. And the good idea about that is, again, you can leverage even the stuff that you already have, and through some of the techniques, using progressive enhancement and responsive design and all that, you can make a site that really works in a variety of platforms. Native apps, keyword being native, means it's written for code specific to a platform. So in the I world, this would be Objective-C. And in the Android world, this would be Java, plus the respective frameworks. Now, who knows? There's a few factors here. First of all, who knows what the future brings? All right, it is possible that future technological developments will steer in one direction or the other. It's certainly possible that either one of these could become more popular. There's advantages and disadvantages to both, and we covered those. Some of the advantage to mobile web is that, again, every platform should be able to access it, provided you have a web browser. Advantage of native apps is that they can take advantage of the full features of that device, whereas mobile web, because it's a language written for everyone and it's a standard, it can't be geared or optimized to any particular platform. You can do that, though, with native applications. All right, you can go and you can easily do that. In addition, the bottom line, sort of, and we can look at all the advantages and disadvantages, and again, I would encourage you to revisit what we talked about in the first few days of class. The bottom line, though, is when all is said and done, organizations are doing the all of the above strategy, typically. You recall we had the guy in from, was it the travel centers? Yeah, that talked about that, and he said they're doing it all, because, the simplicity of apps is great. It's great to have an icon you just click on and go to it. All those things, make for really a good app experience. On the other hand, the universality of the web, the fact that you want to have desktop people using it as well, and so on, gives the advantage of that. Now, as an IT person, you should shudder when you see this, because that means potentially 3 times the work, right? You not only have to get it working in the web environment, but in at least a couple of different mobile, and pardon me? Windows Phone, throw in BlackBerry in there, throw in the fact that you might have different browser, so yeah. It proves to be a big mess, and folks don't like that. And folks want to figure out a way to sort of mitigate that. Well, can't solve all your problems, but there is a tool called Phonegap that allows you to migrate mobile web pages into a native app. And what we're going to do is we're going to play around with that a little bit today. I have to admit I'm not an expert on this, but I did it pretty quickly and yesterday, and I was able to take a web page that I created and create a little mobile app for it. And the good news is if I do something wrong, I have that app I created yesterday. I'll just do a quick sleight of hand, and we'll use that one if this doesn't work. Because this morning I installed some software in here, and I assume everything's all set to run. But if it isn't, we'll do like they do on the TV shows with the cook, and I'll wave my arms, and out will pop a finished turkey. So out will pop a finished app. All right. So at any rate, excuse me. Go ahead.
A tool I heard of that take an application and convert it to different, like Objective-C, Android.
Yeah.
I don't recall the name of it, but I wrote that down.
Yeah, and again, there are a lot of tools that do this kind of thing, or there's a potential for a lot of tools. I'm not familiar with all of them. Again, I am familiar with Phonegap, which is sort of a quick and dirty way to get a mobile presence. One thing that you have to realize is just from a marketing perspective even, you want an app out there. If someone searches for your organization, you want a mobile app even if it doesn't do anything or do much of anything. It's just sort of a strategic marketing thing. Now, the one thing to be concerned about always is with any sort of translation, the translation could go bad, right? There's certainly the potential for these HTML, which is a standard language, to be translated into the various components in the framework, whether it be in the iOS or Android. But, as they say, the experience that I have in the past with these sorts of tools, and any sort of tool that says, well, you write it in one thing and you translate it into others, is that, number one, there could be some sort of compatibility issues where it doesn't quite translate right or doesn't quite work right. Or number two, it might do it in a very brute force way, which means that the code won't be efficient or optimized for that platform. All right. This Phonegap also provides, and we're not going to really dive into this too much, but this Phonegap also provides sort of some framework that will allow you to take advantage of certain aspects of the device, such as a camera and so on, that you might not otherwise be able to take advantage to in a web environment. All right? So, let's go and let's create an app for this, for a web page, and I'm going to show you in a second here. All right? I have this app that when you run it on a desktop, or not app, web page. When you run it on a desktop, it shows you a map of LC. This is sort of a proof of concept I did for my mobile class, because they have an assignment where they have to do this for real. All right? Oh, yeah, all right, right, in the lab. So, because we're viewing this on a desktop machine, it doesn't really know where we are. So therefore, it doesn't show us on the map. At best, it can place us with our internet service provider using the IP address and some sort of mapping, but that's not, excuse me, that's not going to be very precise. I think when one student did this the other day, we show off as being somewhere in downtown Elyria. I don't even see us on there now. But at any rate, because we are not using a handheld device that really has a GPS and positioning, all right, we are not able to see exactly where we are. Also, Google Chrome has been blocked. Yeah, with security. Let's see. No, I just installed Chrome. Allow. Manage location settings. Oh, location. Here we go. All right. For all of these, allow all sites. I'll just enable that. Allow all sites to track my physical location. All right. There we go. Now, if I go in and view it, maybe I have to shut Chrome down and restart it. Actually, let's go and access this. There we go. Yeah. It thinks I'm like down there. All right. Which again is just the way the IP maps to a physical location. So because this doesn't have any sort of GPS on it, it doesn't know where this machine physically is. All it does is it takes my IP address and sort of figures out where we are, which can be, close to accurate. Like if you're doing things such as weather or searching for Italian restaurants, that's probably close enough. But if you're doing some kind of tracking like this, it isn't particularly good. So at any rate, here we are at the college. All right. Let's run this from my phone, and we'll see the difference. Maybe. Yeah, it will be coming up in a second. Wish I'd have brought down the other mobile device. Because if I remember, my GPS was acting funky. Here we go. My GPS is working now. There we go. So notice that this shows me right here in the business building. It's funny how it must be as it's getting a precise reading, it moves it around a little bit. Yeah. You can actually go and do this and walk around with it. So, I won't pain you, but as I walk here, you'll see that moving. As I walk this way, you can actually see it moving just a little bit, which is interesting. If you walk up and down the hall, you definitely can noticeably see it, which is amazing in a way. All right, so I have a mobile web page, and it's just a basic HTML page. I've put it local here on this machine because I want to work with it and show you the editing of it and all that. So if we open it up, all right. Now, if we look at the source code for the HTML, there really isn't anything earth-shattering in this. All right. There are it's just one page a lot of this stuff is code that really came from the W3 Schools example for Google Maps. So with just adapting it for that. So a lot of this uses a Google API. So it's just a simple one-pager. It periodically calls JavaScript to refresh the map, or actually not even to refresh the map, to refresh the pointer on the map. And that's about it. So again, nothing terribly earth-shattering in this web page. Now, what I want to do is I want to go and I want to make a Android application for this. And while I'm at it, I might try to make an iPhone and a Windows 8 and so on and so forth. All right. I'm going to use two tools in doing this. One is the Phonegap tool, which I'm going to use the Phonegap build tool, which allows me to build out on their server and compiling. So that means I don't have to worry about having all the SDKs and all that installed on my machine. So I really don't need to install anything, which is a good thing, right? Yeah, this is free. Yeah. I'm also going to use something called GitHub. All right. Git, as you might know, is British slang for a stupid person. All right, or a jerk. All right. And Linus Torvald, right? Linus Torvald, the guy who made Linux or Linux, created GitHub as a way of doing like version control on software for open source software. So it allows you to create a repository. You can check in open source projects. You can check it out. And these two things work together. So essentially what you have is you have the Phonegap is going to take a GitHub repository and build, along with the stuff in the Phonegap framework, it's going to go and compile and create for me a Android and other versions of the app. So what I had to do first of all is I had to create an account with Phonegap, which is actually now owned by Adobe, so it's an Adobe product, and I had to create something for GitHub. So let me go and log into both of those. So I'm going to go to GitHub. And I can sign in just so that we can see what we have going here. Yes, open source repository. Version control, revision control, oftentimes it's called. And if you look, you see I've created 3 repositories here. I've created one called test, one created home, and one called school. All right. Now with the free version of this, you can set up as many public open repositories as you want. And I think you can set up one private repository. So your $1 million application you'll use as the private one, right? And
It's still a free product.
yeah, but it's still a free product. With a purchase, and I forget what it is, like $10 a month or something, you can have up to 25 private applications. All right. So here I am. Here's my repositories. In addition, this is the repositories living out on the web. Keep in mind how this would work in a real environment. Let's say you and I were involved in an open source project. All right. I may have some changes to make. I would want to check out the code to keep you from going in and making changes to the same code. All right. So I would check it out. I would check it out to my local machine. All right. I would do whatever I needed to do, test it, make sure it works. Then I'd check it back in. And then it would be available for you to go and make the changes that you needed to make. That way, we wouldn't have 2 people working on the same thing at the same time. Really, that's sort of what GitHub provides, it keeps you from doing that sort of thing. All right? So, you also need local repositories. You need folders on your machine that you're going to hold your stuff. Now, in this case, I have a folder that has my web page in it, my one page, all right? And I've installed the Windows version of GitHub, all right? So the repository is living out on the cloud. The Windows app GitHub allows me to work with my local repositories and post them up to the web, the cloud. So let me fire that up.
No, the repository, you can set up a private one that's still considered open source.
No, the private one is not open source. Yeah. All right, here we go.
You never know what's going on behind the scenes.
Right, right. Okay, here we go. So here we have. I'm going to go and I'm going to create a new repository. I don't have any local repositories here, even though I have them up on the cloud, because I created those on another machine. So I'm going to go and I'm going to create, I'm going to take that folder, that LCC folder, I'm going to drag it there, and I'm going to create a new repository. New repository is LCCC. I will call it my demo application, or the, yeah, we'll just call it demo app. All right. That's where the repository will be stored. So again, if I was checking in and out code, that's where it would be from. And I want to push it to GitHub, which means I want to go and I want my GitHub account out in the cloud to be there. Now again, keep this code private. With GitHub, actually I think I may have misspoke. GitHub, you're required to have a paid account to keep private code. Phonegap, you get one private application. So you could do it off of a zip file or whatever.
You're going to make money somehow.
Yeah, sure, sure. So okay, so I'll go and I'll click create. All right. It goes and it does its thing. All right. If I go out here and refresh, that repository's out there now.
It's great because you don't have to worry about the machine.
Right. Right.
Code out there.
Right. I'm going to go into that repository, and it creates a couple of files that Git uses, and it hasn't really committed those changes yet. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to commit those changes. So in other words, my repository is created out in the cloud, but my pages aren't there. So it says that I have uncommitted changes. So I'll call this initial build, and I'll click commit. And what that will do is that will go in and commit those changes up to the repository. So now if I look at the repository, I will see the code. Let's see. And I could put in a request to pull that code if I wanted to. I could log issues and so on and so forth. I could watch it, so I could watch someone else's project and so on. All right?
When you're checking it out, it's automatically locking it.
Yeah, so that other people don't do it. Right. All right. So I now have this, and what I can do is now I have in my repository out there called MLZellers LCCC, I have that code. So now I can go to Phonegap, and I'm going to go to build.phonegap.com. And I can sign in. You can either sign in using GitHub or your Adobe account. Sign in. Whoops. All right. I now have, this is showing me an app I built the other day. All right. I'm going to go in, I'm going to create a new app. All right. So I'll create a new app. I can create my one private and upload a zip file. So I could if I wanted to, I could go and use my one private in Phonegap. That's why I was getting confused between GitHub and Phonegap. Phonegap, you get the one private. GitHub, you don't get any privates. All right, but I could upload a zip file. I could zip up all my things and upload it and make it private. But in the spirit of open sourceness, I'm going to pick that I want this to be an open source app, and then I get to pick the repository. And I'll pick that LCCC repository. And only unable to clone checkout repository. Oh, you got to click publish. I had the exact same problem yesterday. There's one extra step. So I go and click publish, and that's what goes and puts it up on the server. All right. So that syncs everything up. So now I can go in and say I want to use that repository. It fetches a repository. Yep. Yep, I have to publish it to... and I can then go and click Ready to Build. I can put a description here. Click Ready to Build. And we are off building.
It's automatically building all of it.
It's building an Android, a Windows. I assume that's BlackBerry, an HP, and I do not know what that last one is. iOS, it gave me a red thing. It gave me an error yesterday when I did this as well. So you can see as those icons finish, it's finishing up. So it has finished the Android.
This is to convert just HTML to these devices.
This is converting the HTML to the native code for those devices.
I wonder if they are Android.
I don't know. I would not think so, but I don't know. So now I can go and I can go visit the public page for this. Here it is. I can download the file, and I get the APK file, which is what you need to do for the assignment, and then upload it. Or, pardon me? The next assignment. Or I can go in with my handy-dandy QR reader, and notice we got the little QR thing. I can go here and take a picture of it. Now I'll install it. Where is it? If I knew the alphabet, that'll install it.
You probably just send that to somebody.
Yep.
Please test this.
Okay. So, I took the picture of it. It now knows that that's a web address. I can click there. It's going to do its thing. It's downloading. I can go here to my downloads. Yeah, right. Go here to my downloads and click on it. There's the manifest telling me the things. Because it was using the location, it knows that it has to ask to use location and the other things. I can click install. Installs the app. Open the app. And here we go. eventually. There we go. Showing me where I am. This is an Android app. I can click on the College Center. I can click on the business building. And if I walk around, it shows me that. So, what does this mean for our development? It means, one thing it means is that I have the potential to write it in HTML and port it to other places. Now, one thing I didn't do with this that apparently you can do with Phonegap is do things such as download it so that you can have a way to hook into things such as a camera and so on. Let's watch the video here.
Phonegap is a cross-platform native development framework that enables you to essentially write native applications for various mobile phone platforms with HTML, JavaScript, and CSS.
It's super easy. If you know HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, you can build a Phonegap application.
So Phonegap is free to download from Phonegap.com. You can just start writing HTML and JavaScript, compile it with Phonegap, and install it on your phone and run it. So Phonegap runs on iOS devices, iPhone, iPad, also runs on Android, BlackBerry, WebOS, Symbian, now Windows Phone 7, and there's lots more platforms on the way.
I think a big reason why Phonegap was created is because we wanted to get back to building web apps and using HTML, CSS, and JavaScript and not get locked into a proprietary vendor platform.
We built Phonegap as web developers because we wanted to reuse our HTML and JavaScript development skills. We wanted a free and open source platform to build smartphone apps with, and we thought a lot of other web developers would also want that. Phonegap Build is a cloud-based service that lets you compile and do a lot of the development with Phonegap.
You upload it to our servers where we actually do the build process for you.
You don't have to go and download all these different SDKs and toolkits to get set up to build with Phonegap. We take care of all that for you.
Phonegap's strengths come from the fact that it's based on open standards. You get a lot of reuse of your web development skills as well as the frameworks and tools that you're used to working with on the web.
What that means is you don't have to go out and hire an Objective-C expert, Java expert, and so on and so forth. So you can reuse code and you can reuse your existing team to build native applications that you can then deploy to app stores and install directly on handsets.
In Phonegap 2, the big story is plugins for everything. We want developers to be able to compose a version of Phonegap that includes the APIs that they're looking for. Another big part of Phonegap 2 is we're calling Code Overview, which allows you to embed Phonegap into a native application, giving existing native apps a transition path towards Phonegap, or if they just want to incorporate some Phonegap functionality in their application.
The API for Phonegap is pretty simple, one being sensors.
Sensors being things like geolocation, accelerometer, camera.
We also have access to what we call data APIs, so things like the file system. You can read and write files, you can access contact information.
There's tons of companies, big and small, using Phonegap. Zynga, Facebook, Wikipedia, Untapped, SAP, Salesforce.com, and a whole slew of really interesting startups using Phonegap to build great smartphone apps.
All the big vendors believe in the mobile web.
Inside of Adobe, Phonegap is doing better than ever. We're releasing faster. We're integrating into other Adobe creative and development tools like Dreamweaver, CQ, and there's more coming out very shortly. You can download Phonegap for free today from Phonegap.com, or you can sign up for Phonegap Build and start building apps right away.
Now, the one thing that I didn't discuss is, again, using the standardized API to address what they call the sensors, things like the camera, the accelerometer, and all that. I just did a very vanilla conversion of that. But to get a real mobile-ish kind of app, you can work with those things too. I do have to confess I'm not terribly familiar with that. Let's see. You can actually, as far as downloading goes, your choices are to either download the Phonegap framework or to do like I did and upload that. Here's what I wanted. The Phonegap API. Documentation. So for example, for the camera, you can use these plugins, camera, like that, and you can build that in your HTML. All right. So I can put this in there. I can put this in there. This might be a little hard to see. I can put that in my JavaScript, and it will go and it will fire off the camera and then do different things based on that, which is pretty cool. And again, it gets supported in that. So you would incorporate that in your HTML. In fact, let's the example below. Let's go and copy this. Full example. Here we go. So let's go in. Let's do this from scratch. Let's go in and make a new repository. We'll call it camera. Create. I'm going to go in there, in the camera. Paste in a notepad. Save as. Index.html in here. All right. I'm going to go and commit it. Publish it. Then go into Phonegap, or actually build Phonegap. Create a new app. pick my camera. Build it. It's almost isn't fair. It's like, why didn't we do this week 1 and then we could have just kicked back and relaxed?
So now I'm thinking they should have taken your classes.
Yeah. Well.
I'd seen either this tour or
The thing is part of this is a philosophical thing. Some people will say native is the way to go because that, is optimized for that platform, no translation, nothing like that. And then other people will say no, standards is the way to go. So let's go in and let's scan my little thingy. Uh-huh. Right. Right. Alrighty, there's a download. And we'll go and, okay. Here is the application. Yeah, I don't know. I think you have to have some kind of key, or you had to have asked Steve Jobs in advance or something like that. All right, so I'm going to go capture a photo. So I will click capture. And by doing that, that will, tell me I have a new email. That's not. Yep. I'm not sure what it's doing because it is not. It's not bringing it up. Okay, well here we see a flaw with this. Because I hit on the button and I would expect it to bring my camera up. And it doesn't. Unless I'm reading what it's supposed to do wrong. Of course, that ain't going to work because it doesn't have a camera. Wait for Cordova to get. I'm going to try reinstalling it just for laughs. Right? That's kind of the default behavior. It was weird because I did not get that message before that you get from the manifest. Yeah. So now I click capture photo and no. I did get the message the second time, but it does not seem to be working. That's a good question. This is You know, I guess herein lies the rub. You know, I'm not really sure what's going on for it. I could go and troubleshoot this if I wanted to, but again, you know, I'm kind of curious why it didn't work, but we'll try this again tomorrow when we do this lecture, and we'll see. Maybe we'll get it to work tomorrow.
Yeah, the buttons might
Right. Right. All right. Let's. Yeah, I'm kind of curious why this isn't going, but all right, there we go. Oh, right. Right, it goes to another layer. They talk about this, the Cordova.
So I don't know, because the data mentioned that you might have applications might not respond.
Right, right. And that's kind of what I was wondering. Yeah, it talks here about connecting to Cordova, and Cordova is a way that this is the API that you can use to go and access those things. But absolutely, you know, again, when you talk about this diagram, you know, your HTML has to go through those framework things, whereas the stuff that's written in that native goes to it directly. So yeah, you're right. There's another layer. I mean, you have a similar thing with the whole Java compiling and getting the bytecode, because that's not directly executed. That's sort of an intermediary step, and then the Java virtual machine executes that. So you're right. In any kind of this sort of thing, it's like running an emulator versus running an operating system. Like, I don't know, do you have Windows installed on your Mac? Do you use Boot Camp, or do you use, like, okay, so that you're like rebooting it. When you reboot it, it's a Windows machine. The other way that you can do that is you can do that through an emulator like VMware or Parallels or something like that. And then what you can do is it's actually a Mac app that you open it up, and you open up a Windows window within your Mac OS. But the problem is, again, is it going through another layer to get there. And that, by definition, is not going to be as clean and efficient, and is going to be more prone to problems and all that. You know, the good news is for you to get into Windows, you have to reboot, right? If you're using one of the virtualization things, you just open up a window inside of it, and you're kind of running Windows inside a Mac OS window.
So you have access to both too?
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Yeah, you should be able to do that. Yeah, that should be smoother. All right. Well, I'm a little disappointed that didn't work, but all in all, pretty good. I might do a little troubleshooting on that if I get a chance, because that is interesting. I do wonder if it is just I'm being impatient and clicking these things before. Just for giggles, I'm going to reboot my phone. Maybe for lots. Yeah. All right. But anyhow. Yeah, right. Right. Well, this thing, even not doing anything funny like this, will occasionally the camera will lock up, or I can't use it, and it could just be that. All right. Well, we'll turn it back on and see. Hopefully, it works. But if not, that's what we have today. All right.